Since I last made a video on this channel, plenty has happened in the world of Bristol City. We've had our games against Millwall and Leicester, a little bit of talk around contract negotiations and the January transfer window as well. We'll go through it all. I'm going to talk about the Millwall game just quickly. There's plenty of other Bristol City content creators, and it was on Saturday, so it already feels like it's been ages since that game, so I'm not going to go through it in too much detail. I also wanted to say I'm sorry that I'm only able to get weekly content out on this channel at the moment. I'm just so busy with other things that I'm juggling in my life right now. This is about as best as I can do at the moment. I'm committed to this channel, but it's probably one video a week for the time being. Millwall game, I think that was probably the angriest I've ever been leaving Ashton Gate, because I felt it was a total robbery of a result. I mean, Millwall, to say they deserved it is probably not the correct words, but we got well and truly Millwalled on Saturday. 1-0 win, completely against the run of play, a frustrating, scrappy goal, and of course we had the ball in the back of the net at the end of the game, and it was wrongly ruled out for offside. So definitely many ways you could feel aggrieved about that fixtures. I've got a few notes about the game. I mean, we were decent. I thought our play all round was decent for most of the game. We pretty much dominated Millwall for 90 minutes, didn't we? But we just had no end product to our game at all. The final pass, the final finish, it just wasn't there on Saturday, and we got punished. You know, Millwall with a proper number 9, you know, an absolute goal-scoring instinct number 9, Ivanovic, scored the winner, and that absolutely ended us. And yeah, the goal was scored in typical Millwall fashion. I guess the main talking point about the game, really, I'm just going to move my mic a second, is the scrap that happened at the end of the game. I've got to be careful because I'm not too sure how much fighting talk you can do on YouTube, so I'm going to be careful about what I say. And I just want to give my thoughts on what happened here because I haven't had a chance to do that publicly on YouTube yet. I've got to say, the scenes were ugly, right? And I've got to be careful, I guess, what I say, because I found out at recent games that I've been to that there's quite a lot of young people, very young people that watch my channel. So in no way am I like going to condone fighting, but I quite like to see what happened on Saturday. You know, Alex Neil, I'm pretty sure that's his name, failed or refused to shake Struber's hand. That's categoric in video evidence. I can't actually show any videos because I think I'll get copyright struck by broadcasters. And then Jason Knight took exception to that. He shoved Alex Neil, and then I can't remember the guy's first name. Was it Dave Livermore, the Millwall, who's assistant coach or a member of their staff? Then grabbed Jason Knight by the throat, and it all kind of escalated. Lots of people describing the scenes as ugly and not what you want to see, etc. Obviously, no one really wants to see a fight. I'm sure there are people that want to see a fight at a football game, but at the end of the day, I quite liked what I saw from Jason Knight. He didn't tolerate disrespect. And I think there's an element, fighting's bad, but also there's an element of not being soft and not tolerating disrespect. And I think that's what Jason Knight showed on Saturday. The scenes that escalated after that were a bit mental, really. And I think, to be honest, I think Millwall probably come away with that looking almost worse than we do, because when you think of the actions that actually took place, all that Jason Knight did was shove their manager. It's not like he threw a punch or anything. He just shoved him and took a bit of an exception to refusing to shake Struber's hand. And then obviously everything escalated. Even Joe Williams, who I think might have a hamstring or ankle injury, he ran off wherever he was and got in the scrap as well. And I think he ended up taking Livermore to the ground at one point. Yeah, crazy scenes. But I think my overarching point is I quite like what I saw, because I don't think any of our players threw a punch as such or got crazy. They didn't tolerate disrespect shown to our manager, and then they all backed each other when the chips were down as well. So that was something I personally quite like to see. And then we obviously have the game against Leicester. I don't think there's a better way to sum it up other than the cliche of a real game of two halves. Came out the blocks okay, I thought. We had a better share of the first 10 minutes or so, and then Leicester really got a grip on the game. And rather than really them being amazing, I just thought we looked really poor. Twine for their goal from the penalty. He was shocking. It came from a corner that Leicester had. Twine had, the ball was it was high up, coming down. Twine had a good, I'd say, 2 or 3 seconds to think about what he was going to do with his clearance. He booted the ball directly at the Leicester winger. I think it was Fatawu, was it? That he booted it at. It was one of the Leicester wingers anyway. He then took the ball down, took Twine on. Twine took him down in the penalty area. Ayew scored the penalty. It was a Panenka. We were 1-0 down, gutted. And it was all really, unfortunately, down to an individual error from Scott Twine. I'm just going to go into the lineup so we can talk about the other players we had as well. He was pretty rubbish, to be honest, in that game, wasn't he, Twine? That was one of the worst performances I've seen from him. And you could just tell after that clearance and giving away the penalty, his head had gone. And then their second goal came. Oh, it was so frustrating, wasn't it? Fatawa would pick the goal. I'm going to try and describe it with my cursor. He picked the ball up around here, took on Pring and beat him. Absolutely, I used the word pissed past Viner on the touchline. Probably shouldn't say that with young people, but that's how I described the goal. And obviously they squared it across to none other than Bobby Reid, who slotted it past Vitek. 2-0 down at half-time. And I've got to say, going into the half-time break, I didn't know how he'd come back from that. The whole team looked pretty dejected. I didn't believe that we could come back from the game. But Struber, our gaffer, he must have put an absolute rocket up those players at half-time. Borges and Armstrong both came on for Viner and Scott Twine. Both two really good substitutions, I thought. Viner did not have his best game either. Obviously, like I said, let the winger absolutely blast past him. And to be honest, I just think it's him playing on the left of the defence. I just think it's the wrong side to defend on. He's constantly having to use his left foot to play passes. He's just so much better on the right. But the problem is, on the right of that back three at the moment, we've got George Tanner, who has been absolutely excellent in pretty much every game for the last month or so. And obviously, I thought Scott Twine deserved his substitution. I then thought both Armstrong and Reese up front, it really gave Reese more room and more time. He looked so much better in that second half. And one thing I'd say about Emil Reese is he's a player that we were told by Leicester fans shows up in like 1 out of every 3 games. And he's not been great of recent, not to the level that he started the season at anyway. We were all absolutely terrified at the start of the season what would happen if Emil Reese got injured. So things have played out, I guess, a little bit differently to that in that we've actually managed okay without him. But I don't think a lot of people have been suggesting that he's not necessarily fully come back from that injury. But he scored last night. Sorry, I hit my mic then. He scored last night and he actually looked really good in that second half. Almost like a player that wasn't injured. Funny that, isn't it? Goals for us obviously came from Mark Sykes and equaliser straight after half-time. So Struber, like I said, put an absolute rocket up those players. And in the first couple of minutes, we were absolutely all over Leicester, weren't we? We were all over them for the majority of that second half. Sykes scoring, I think, after, was it like 54 seconds, something like that? Almost immediately after half-time. You thought, goal goes in that quickly, you're right back in the game. Leicester did really absolutely nothing to respond to it until, I think, that wasn't Emil Reese, it was Sinclair Armstrong got in a bit of a clash with their keeper. Brought him down. Well, didn't bring him down. Sort of just had like a 50-50 challenge with their keeper. It wasn't a foul. Their keeper went down and obviously the Leicester players all went over to the manager. That's something that's creeping into the game that I hate, is these sort of halfway through a half breaks where players get a team talk. Sort of a little bit messy with this match review, aren't I? And then obviously Emil Reese with the goal to equalise. All in all, it was a good, I'd say, going into that game, a lot of Bristol City fans would have taken a point, but I think after how well we played in that second half and how much we had Leicester on the ropes, I think we can go away almost disappointed that we didn't completely turn the game around and get 3 points. But yeah, decent result. And we're still in the mix, aren't we? We're not right in the top 6 anymore. Well, we'll get the table up. We're not in the top 6 anymore. We're 10th. But we're still in the mix. We're 1 point off the playoff positions. The thing is, though, for us, is our upcoming fixtures, man, they're so big, aren't they? So big. We got Coventry away, obviously, on Saturday. I actually think we could do something in that game. I know Coventry are really dangerous going forward, scored a lot of goals, but they're also conceding quite a lot of goals. I genuinely think we could get something at Coventry. And then I think we can get anything in all of these games. I don't think we can win all of them, but at the same time, I think we can win any of them. I still have that feeling about us. And I also think the development of the team, even though we haven't got the results in the last couple of games, I think we've learned something about the team in both of them. I think the scrap at the end of the Millwall game improves how together and this squad is and how they're not a soft team. Certainly not anymore anyway. And then I think the halftime team talk against Leicester and the performance in the second half shows that the strength of our manager and how he can galvanise these players. So I think both of those things we're learning about the team as we go through, right? We got Cov, Borough at home on Saturday the 20th. They're obviously under a new gaffer, doing pretty well. West Brom away, Millwall away. I'll be going to that. Let me know if you're off to Millwall away. And then Portsmouth at home on New Year's Day. And obviously a big January in store after that. We're 10th in the league. We need a couple of wins from those games, don't we, to really be in the mix of the playoffs. I think we're like 1 point off it at the moment, 1-2 points off it, depending on which position you're chasing. And I think if we're still in the mix come January, it saves our season, really, doesn't it? Because, well, I say it saves our season. I think the next few years are almost contingent on that. It was a point I made on Twitter the other day, but if you just think about Bristol City at the moment, right, the position we're in, the players we have out of contract in the summer, and the decisions that you're going to have to make in January, right? I think if we're completely out of the playoff race, if you get semi-decent money from Ameti and Viner, you take it in the summer, in January, right? Because they're not really going to help us get promoted or anything like that. But if we're in the mix, there's probably no fee that is acceptable to us in January. Both of those players are probably worth more to us than any fee we could get. Does that make sense? So that's two of our best players that could be off for free in the summer if we don't get promoted. I almost feel like we're sort of going into a promotion or bust season, really. But these games leading up to January, they set the stall for what we do in terms of business. We could get £11 million, for example, if Semenyo goes, which I think is looking more and more likely every day. Yeah, huge few games coming up and a huge, I think, January transfer window. Speaking of the January transfer window, Struber has come out in the press a few times to say, we know what we want, what direction we want, and where we want to improve the squad. So it does look like I said, if we're in the mix for the playoffs, the club are going to do some business in January, right? I just think as well, when you look at Bristol City at the moment, what the rest of the Championship is up to, it's a real just complete hit and miss league, isn't it? Teams are winning and losing against everyone. There's no, like, obviously Coventry, Middlesbrough are probably the top two in sort of, well, Coventry are running away with it, aren't they? But outside of that, it's anyone's, genuinely anyone's. And I think the quality of squad we have is the best I can remember in a very, very long time. This manager is pretty special, isn't he, Gerhard Struber? If you own Bristol City and you're in charge of managing the budgets, etc., surely you want to improve it a little bit in January. Where I think we need to do business, I think we probably need 2 in, maybe 3 in and 2 out, right? I think Fally Mayulu, Hayden Roberts, they could probably leave in January and send them on and wish them the best. No bad blood. I'm not going to hate on players personally. And I then think we need a forward. There's a bit of an argument as to whether we need one that's just an absolute slaughter, like a completely clinical, deadly finisher, or one that can play across the front line in each of the 2 number 10 spots and as the centre forward who has a little bit of pace and a bit of prowess to get in behind, right? Those are probably 2 archetypes that we might need. We'll probably only get one of them. I also feel a little bit uncomfortable about the cover we have in the midfield. I think we could do a lot worse than get another midfielder in. And then maybe a left-sided defender as well. Those would be the positions I would personally sign. So we'll see. I think it's fair to say that since Struber has come in, the business that we've done in VTech and Neto Borg, I think would probably be signings that were signed off by him. I think we've done pretty well, haven't we? So trust in Struber and his scouting. And obviously, it's a mixture of Struber and I think the players that he'll list, and then obviously the players that the City board, I'm separating them, but you know what I mean, like the likes of Tillian, etc., have scouted. It'd be a mixture, I think, of the short list that we have. And finally, that's January. We've also got Mark Sykes, right, who I think has been a very, very good player for us since he signed. And I'm just trying to picture or piece together the situation, right? As I understand it, the club signed him from Oxford on, was it a 3 or 4 year deal with an option to extend by a year. I think in February of this year, we took the option to extend for another year. So that had him until summer 2026. But I think if you exercise an option to extend, that probably means that the player doesn't get a pay rise, right? So I'm just thinking of the situation. He has probably been signed from Oxford on obviously not the highest salary at the football club. A few years ago, we triggered an option to extend his contract, which probably means he may have got a pay rise, but not a massive one. So he's definitely not one of the highest paid players at the club, probably one of the lower paid players at the club. and he's yet to be offered a new deal. I'm a little bit worried about this because I think it's probably, you think of the key players we have out of contract this summer, Viner, Mehmeti and Sykes. Which of those three is the easiest to get over the line? I would argue probably the Mark Sykes deal, isn't it? I think he's got a young family and he's hopeful that something can happen. He's been quoted in the press to say that. So I think he clearly wants to sign for this club. It's just a case, I guess, of what his expectations are and whether the club can meet them. One thing I would say about Mark Sykes, though, is I think it'd be really difficult to replace him. He hasn't been like the second coming of Xavi in our midfield, but he's been very decent. He's filled in when we needed him. And at right wing back, I think across this season, he's arguably been better than Ross McCrory. So it'd be a real shame if we were to lose him in the summer. And I don't think players with his versatility, his passion, desire, he seems a good lad, does Mark Sykes. I don't think that's very easy to replace. So, yeah, it does worry me that he could potentially be off in the summer. And I hope a deal gets done because, yeah, in my opinion, he's one of our best players. All right, well, that's the end of another Robin's Nest video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know by leaving a like rating. Let me know in the comments if you got any thoughts on what I've said. The Millwall Leicester game, obviously the business we do in January, and whether or not Mark Sykes signs a new contract. I thought those were the main topics to cover this week. And yeah, I'll see you probably sometime next week. Like I said, I'm probably only able to commit a video a week on this channel at the moment. If you didn't already know, I work full-time alongside this channel, and I run another one as well about Fantasy Premier League. If you're interested, I'll leave a link to my Fantasy Premier League channel. The Premier League's schedule has been really hectic recently, and it's a bigger channel than this one, and I'm having to prioritise that, basically, which is why I'm going down to one video a week on the Robin's Nest, but I hope you can understand. I'll stop monologuing about my life now. If you haven't already, please do subscribe to the Robin's Nest, and I'll catch you in the next one.